Okay, we left off with our JSON and XML response connecting to the database. Just showing you all that stuff still working right now. Now what we want to do, let's jump back over to Visual Studios and start preparing our index HTML page. Okay, now what we're going to do is let's get our client together by um, let's create a scripts folder here. So we'll right click, well, we gotta stop first. Right click, add folder. Okay, and what we're gonna do is let's go ahead and use Jquery. So what we're gonna do is right click on references, and if you don't have this installed, make sure you do. NuGet, so we're gonna click on manage NuGet packages. It's gonna go out to NuGet. Typically you can go to jquery.com and manually add them. But this is nice. It saves you a ton of time. We can just go here and choose install. And it'll go and add that. Another really good library to help us kickstart this project is let's add Bootstrap too. And Bootstrap allows you to style your web application. We use this a lot of times to save a lot of time during this process when we may not have a specific design ready yet and we're just trying to get functionality in place. So we'll install Bootstrap, and then let's go and look at what was created. So we have some scripts that were added, and we have some content that was added from NuGet. So this one's from Bootstrap. What we're going to use for Bootstrap and our header tag, we're going to go ahead and throw the style over here for Bootstrap. You can use the Minify version, but I like using the full one when I'm working on the project. Just allows you to read it better, especially if you're going to make a customized version of it. You can go in here and make changes, copy a specific style, and then make it your own. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is let's add Jquery, because you have to add Jquery first before we add the Bootstrap JS, because it's dependent on this library. So we'll just use the Minify version of that because we're not going to modify Jquery. And then we'll go and add our Bootstrap JS file. Okay, the Minify. The Minify version is going to just be smaller, hard to read, smaller footprint. Okay, the next thing we're going to do, we're just going to add our own custom JavaScript class. So we're going to right click on our scripts folder, go to add, I'm going to choose JavaScript, and we can just call this SAL for Service Access Layer. And we'll hit OK. What I like to do, I have this nice little plugin installed where I can right click on this, and it's the Web Essentials plugin. I can right click on it and choose Minify JavaScript files. And what that does, it'll automatically minify my JavaScript file as I'm developing it. So then what I want to do is take this Minify version, and if you see it's linked. So anytime I save here, it's going to update the Minify version. So what I'm going to do is go to my index, and I'm going to take the Minify version of my SAL and put it in here. Include it there. Okay, so that's all the files I need, the references I'm going to need to have to get rolling here. So let's start off with just creating the sound, and we'll go through styling in the next video. Okay, SAL, we'll go to the SAL, and what I usually like to do is create a custom module or like a namespace like we did in C#. So I'll create a SAL object, and it's really just like an array. So I'll say SAL, and I'll say get, well, let's do this. Let's put our service reference. So we'll create our base URL, and that's going to be our API service. So we'll say API service SVC, and that'll be our base URL, and then you just add a comma. Then our next line, we're going to add our get. So we'll go to get our active flavors from our interface, bring it to our style, and this is what you'll call in JavaScript, this method. This will become a function to call. And we're going to make this a function. It doesn't have any parameters. And what I like to do in here is put something in called callback. I'll talk about that a little bit later when we do styling. So what I'll do is I'll create the ajax just as jQuery. Make my ajax function. And then I'll add done here. So when it's complete, I'll create another function with results. And this will take the contents that's returned. And then I'll use my callback method here, which I'll talk about my function here. And again, I'll talk about what that does later. It's a little tricky, but this will allow you to build this really quick. So I pass my results from the ajax call here back into whatever I specify. Okay, so what we're going to do, just so we don't forget, is let's do our data type. It's going to be JSON-P, just because you're going to end up doing this sometimes where you're doing cross-domain. If cross-domain meaning if, say, this web service that we're creating now doesn't belong, it's not in the same domain. So it's not in abc.com. It may be in xyz.com or Twitter or somewhere else. So you have to call JSON-P for cross-domain requests over the internet. We'll talk about that a little bit later too. Okay, next we're going to add our URL. Our URL is going to be our base URL plus, if we go back right here, you see how we have our get flavors? We'll put that right here. And what we can do, so we don't have to put slash every time, we'll add that there. Okay, so that, and we'll put a comma here. And that'll take care. Now what I usually do is I add this too and just leave it blank. Just so, because I usually paste this a lot of the time and then I'll add my parameters later. So these will just be blank. It's not necessary. I just like to add it there. Okay, so what that does is that's our basic call for Ajax. So all we got to do now is let's go to our index HTML file. And if you notice, just to show you, this was Minify and created for us. So it's going to be available in our index. So what we're going to do is we'll just create a little script tag here. And we'll say style. We'll do a little bit of jQuery and say document ready. And we'll say the function. And we'll just call it onload. This will handle the onload event. So we'll say sal get flavors. And we're going to do anonymous callback here. I'll explain this a little bit later when we do our interface. Okay, and these are going to be the results from my sal. So I'm just going to do a console and log. I'm going to write it to the console here so you can see our result sets. So basically you wire that up and then let's build it and see what we have. Okay, so what we're going to have here, it's a blank page, but it's saying that we have an error for base URL. Now the reason why we're getting that is if we jump into the sal, it's looking for base URL in this method, but it's a part of the sal namespace. So you have to put this in front of it. So, because it's a part of the sal. So that was a mistake on our part. So if we go back now and run it, we can refresh and we don't have any errors. So if you notice, it went out And I'm in Google Chrome here, so if you want to know how to open that, in Windows it's Control Shift I, and that'll open up your console. And what happened when I refreshed here, I'll clear it and reload. It went out to my web service and I wrote to my console. Here's the objects that it returned in JSON. Okay, so next we'll show you how to work with the JSON objects after you get your return JSON requests. See you at the next video.